What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today I'm back in Raid Shadow Legends, and we'll be actually overing the fusion today, and I'm not gonna open any of my shards. I'm saving up for the summoning event coming out in what? Let me check really quick. Not here. News. The summoning event happening on October 16th. That's when I'll open all my shards. I might get some more shards. But today I want to be talking about kind of this fusion, what I feel about it, what I'll do with the fusion, because from a realistic standpoint, I'm not going to get the new champ, the legendary champ. I don't have the potions, I don't have the energy, I don't have the XP brews to get these champs up to Ascension 4 and 5, level 40 and 50. I don't have enough food, etc. But I'm just going to say it right now, the fusion's kind of scummy because everything in the fusion is new. You cannot save for this fusion because every single champion in this fusion is completely new that was just released today. Granted, you can get each of these champions from events, which is kind of good because then you can actually try out newer champions and you don't need a summon for them. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, but people that want to get Vergum Car, well, you have to go for every single event unless you want to spend a bunch of money, buy a bunch of shards, and try to summon those champions. So first and foremost, let's talk about Vergum Car, who, I mean, he kind of looks like a Bantha from Star Wars. If you guys have, watched Star Wars, kind of looks like a Bantha. So like somebody should sit on him and then he'd, run people over or something like that. But his A1 is Bejeweled Bulk. Attack one enemy has a 35% chance of placing a stun debuff for one turn. The chance increases by 15% for each buff on the target. This isn't bad because if your opponents are running like a buff heavy team, for instance, like Valkyrie gives a bunch of buffs, and like Martyr also gives a bunch of buffs. Those champs, this could basically be it could be increased up to 100% stun chance, so that's pretty good. Honored Ancient removes all provoked debuffs and one random debuff from all allies. Places a 60% increased defense buff for 2 turns on allies who have debuffs removed. Also places a shield buff on all allies except for 20% of this champ. Places a shield buff on all allies equal to 20% of this champion's max HP for 2 turns. Sorry, guys. Honored Ancient, it's not a bad ability. It's similar to the the Fragment Summon champion that came out like a week ago. And I actually have him. And I mean, it's a similar thing. He puts a shield. The other champion, Drago, I believe, is what he's called. He puts a 15% shield, but he gets the provoke removal as well as buff removal. Crushing Trample attacks all enemies, removes one random buff from each enemy, has a 75% chance of removing 2 random debuffs from each enemy, places a 100% block heal debuff for 3 turns on enemies who have 1 or more buffs removed. Also places a 60% increased debuff or decreased defense debuff for 2 turns on enemies who have 2 buffs removed. Excuse me, guys. It's a little bit late today, so my brain's not really working. But yeah, that's Vergum Car, and then his passive is immune to provokes and fills champion's turn meter by 20% for each time an enemy attempts to place a provoke debuff. So this is like, the reason I'm not going for this champ is mainly because it's a very niche champion. He's pretty much only usable against, he's obviously an arena specialist, but he's only going to be usable in arena matchups where there's going to be like Krisk or Martyr or Umbral Enchantress who have that AoE provoke, and then because he's immune to provoke, he goes first, removes those provokes, and you can go nuke them to death. So that's Vergum Car. So let's take a look at these epics, and I'll probably go for all except for one of these epics, and I'll just explain to you guys why. But first, let's go over the kits. First one, Fane, who is a mouse lady. She should not be in the Skinwalkers. There should be a new faction. And I know a lot of people are disappointed about that. I am too. I feel like they should just make these champions part of a new faction. But yes, Fane. She is a mice humanoid thingy. First, A1. I can't speak today. Exotic Blades, level 1. Attack one enemy twice. Each hit has a 35% chance of stealing 5% of the target's current turn meter. So you can steal up to 10% of the target's current turn meter. So that's actually not bad, because you can steal up to 10% of the turn meter if your enemies are already at maxed turn meter. So it's not bad because you're stealing. Unlike Painkeeper, it's just she gives herself 10%. So you're removing 10% from your opponent. Like, the maximum you can remove is 10% from your opponents. That's not bad. It's not great. Flower's Tears. Attacks one enemy. Has a 75% chance of placing two 5% poison debuffs and a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. This is obviously for Clan Boss, because Clan Boss you need a decreased attacker, and generally for earlier game you're using poison to deal the majority of your damage. This is a very blatantly Clan Boss ability, and you can book it down to a 3-turn with 100% chance of placing the 2 5% poisons and the 50% decreased attack debuff. It's not a bad ability. It's actually fairly good, especially saying that her A1 is also fairly good at stealing turn meter. So let's take a look at her A3. Flowing Style. Attacks one enemy 3 times. The first hit has a 75% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 3 turns. The second hit has a 75% chance of placing a 25% weakened debuff for 3 turns. The third hit heals the champion by 4% of her max HP for every debuff on the target. So if you have the max 10 debuffs on the Clan Boss, you're healing for 40% of her max HP. Basically, that's a half heal. Like, she's healing for 50% of her health. And that's a massive heal in Clan Boss, saying that she's not a healer. This also has a bunch of other stuff, with the 60% decreased D and the 25% weaken. So this is like a really great ability, and you can book it down to a 4-turn cooldown with a 100% chance to land everything. That's amazing. She is amazing. Yes, she's very, very squishy. She's only got 9,000 hit points at max, and she's got very low defense, so the trouble's going to be keeping her alive. But if you can get that done, she's going to be a beast in the Clan Boss, and I think she's basically a Clan Boss specialist, and that's about it. I'm going to be going for this champion from the summoning event, because, I mean, I need a Clan Boss. I need a better Clan Boss team, so definitely going for her. Bareth the Bloodsoaked. He's actually, his event's actually coming out in like 10 hours. It's a champion training event, so I recommend all of you guys do go for him, because champion training event isn't that hard, as long as you have a bunch of energy. For instance, I'm saving my energy right now. As long as you have a bunch of energy refills stored, and you have a bunch of brews and a bunch of food champions ready to get ranked up, you should be fine. Bareth the Bloodsoaked. First of all, he looks absolutely awesome. I personally think he looks the best out of all the newer champions. New champions released today, basically. So yeah, and his A1 is Gilded Weapon. Attacks one enemy twice. The first hit has a 20% chance of filling this champion's turn meter by 10%. The second hit has a 20% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 10%. That's not bad, because you're able to remove the enemy's turn meter as well as give yourself some turn meter. It's not a bad A1. Again, similar to Fane's A1, where she's stealing a max of 10% of your opponent's turn meter. A2, Splattering Hacks. Attacks one enemy twice. The first hit places a shield equal to 25% of the damage inflicted on all allies for 2 turns. The second hit heals all allies by 10% of the damage inflicted. This is... I feel like a lot of these newer champions have the 1 hit does something, 2 hit, the second hit does something, the third hit does something. And I find that to be kind of fun. So this is another one. The first hit places a shield for 25% of the damage inflicted, and the second hit heals all allies by 10% of the damage inflicted on a 3-turn cooldown when booked. So that's actually not a bad ability. I can definitely see him being very, very useful in Barbarian Faction Wars, the Barbarian Crypts, and I'm not too sure where else you'd actually use him. I mean, double hit, so maybe Fire Knights? Serpent Axes, his A3. Attacks one enemy twice. The first hit has a 75% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns, and a 75% chance of removing any increased attack buffs from the target. The second hit has a 75% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns, and a 75% chance of removing any increased defense buffs from the target only. This is a pretty big box of text on this Champions A3. Basically, the gist is that his first hit will have a 75% chance of removing the increased attack, as well as implying a 50% decreased attack, while the second hit has the 75% chance of removing any increased defense and putting a 60% decreased defense debuff. It's a tongue twister. But yeah, he seems really, really good. His base attack is absolute garbage. Less than 600 base attack. Granted, he is an HP-based champion, excuse me. And, I mean, its HP is just kind of, like, mediocre. I mean, it's fairly good for an epic, I guess. And, yeah, that's about it for Mr. Barret. So, next up, Caden. Now, Caden is very unique among the Dark Elves because he's kind of thick. If you take a look at other Dark Elves here, where are the Dark Elves? Take a look at, for instance, like Warden is like the thickest I've seen of the Dark Elves. He's got a larger waistline. If you look at the typical Dark Elves, right, like Delver or like Fang Cleric or Sylar, they're all fairly slender. Madame Ceres, they're all fairly slender. And then you just have Caden here, very, very thick, kind of short, I guess. Yeah, he's kind of short as well. Looks like quarantine really got to him. But Caden is a great champion, actually. You know, despite his smaller, thicker stature, he is a great champion and does some real damage in the form of his utility. So he's a defensive-based champion, and his A1 is called Halberds Fall. Attacks one enemy and has a 15% chance of placing a provoked debuff for 1 turn. So he's obviously a tank, and he actually has pretty low HP. Granted, he is 550 on these stats, but he's got quite low HP, actually. And you can book it up to a 30% chance of provoking, but I mean, it's not a consistent provoke. It's not like a Seeker. I believe Seeker can be booked up to like a 50% chance, but it's not a bad ability. A2, Shatter Sweep. Attacks all enemy, has a 75% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. So again, decreased attack is fairly good. It can help you in faction crypts, and you can book that up to a 100% chance on a 3-turn cooldown. That's not bad. AoE 3-turn cooldown, decreased attack. This could actually be viable. He could actually be viable in Spiders because he's got a fairly consistent AoE, and he's able to apply a decreased attack. Finally, Favor of the Chamber. Revives 2 random allies with 50% HP and places a 60% increased D on them for 1 turn. That is absolutely insane. Reviving 2 random, but 2 champs with 60% increased D on a 4-turn cooldown when booked. That's pretty insane. That's why I want Caden. I mean, that's pretty insane. Alright, that's a really great ability. It's going to help you out in faction crypts, getting 3 stars on the crypts, on the boss fight even, maybe. And this can be used in the arena. He can be thick boy, tanking hits with the provoke, landing those provokes, tanking hits. And then he, when people get dropped, for instance, your nukers, when you just bring them back up with Favor of the Chamber. So great champ here. Finally, we have 2Hack the Wanderer, who's actually a champion I'm not too excited about in the fact that you can't get him from the events. You could actually have to fuse him. And like I said, I don't have a lot of resources to give to these rare champions to then get 2Hack. So I might not go for him. I might go for him, we'll see. Unfair Fight. Attacks 1 enemy twice. Each hit has a 30% chance of increasing the cooldowns of one of the target skills by 1 turn at random. Increase the cooldown of all of the target skill by 1 turn. Instead, if this champion has less than 50% HP when attacking on each hit. That is pretty good. So, just the gist of his kit, basically, he wants to be at low health. He wants to be at like below 50% health because he gets so many benefits from being below. For instance, on his A1, he can actually block all cooldown abilities on champions for 1 turn if he's below 50% HP. Next one is Whirl of Battle. Attacks all enemies. Has a 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 1 turn. Also places a 30% increased speed buff on this champion for 2 turns. Heals this champion by 15% of the damage inflicted if they have less than 50% HP when attacking. So again, he's getting something out of being low health, in this case, healing. And finally, it's a 3 Clever Brutality. Or is that Cleaver or Clever? I'm not sure. Clever Brutality. Attacks one enemy. Steals 50% of the target's current turn meter. Has a 75% chance of placing a stun debuff for 2 turns. Steals 100% of the target's turn meter if this champion has less than 50% HP when attacking. That is a pretty solid ability. That's really similar to, I believe, Gruhawk's A3 or something like that, where he steals 100% of the target's turn meter. Same thing here, if he's below 50% HP, he's going to be able to steal all of the target champion's turn meter, and the stun can be booked up to 100%. And he's also got a passive ability. Decrease the damage taken by this champion by 20% when their HP drops below 60%. Like I said, a lot of bonuses, a lot of benefits from being below 50% health. And I want to just show you guys the Gruhawk, I believe, the ability I was talking about. Where is Gruhawk? Yeah, Gruhawk. This ability here fills the turn meter. Not this one. Yeah, this one steals the target's turn meter. That's basically what I was trying to say. It's very similar to that ability. No real rares caught my eye, but basically just a quick recap. This event's kind of scummy. I wouldn't recommend you actually even go for Vergamkar unless you're like end game, because you're not going to be facing a lot of provoking AoE provoke teams. You're mainly going to be facing speed teams, and this guy is absolutely useless in those situations. And I don't really see any other use for him, because his primary the thing of interest with him is being immune to provoke and removing all provoke and 1 random debuff. So other than that, he's kind of useless. And honestly, I'd much rather have like Kaden, Fane, and Bareth than having Vergamkar. So that's why I'm not going for him. As always, please, like, subscribe, and thanks for watching. As always, stay tuned. See you guys next time. Peace.